Hello, everybody. Right, I am Kish Hirani. I've been given the privilege to host this wonderful panel, Diversity, the Road for the Future. The only qualification I have right now for hosting this is I was last year's award winner. So I've been given this privilege to host this panel with this year's award nominees. So please welcome to the stage, the virtual stage, Liz, Robin, Harinder, Shay, and Ian.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Kish.
Before we get started, I have an apology from Gemma. Gem is unfortunately got a clash. She's a hospital appointment, which is in current climate to get that. That's absolutely wonderful. But she won't be able to attend. But apart from that, I've got all the award nominees who are going to be remaining award nominees forever. That will never take that away from you. So I'm going to do a very quick intro. First of all, everybody who's joined in, welcome. We do apologize. There was some technical issues, so we were all waiting backstage and have joined in now, and we are all going. Right, so to get started, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Kish Hirani, as I mentioned. I'm the chair of BAME Games. Got multiple hats. I'm a CTO, I'm a mentor, and a few other things, and a diversity advocate. And I'm going to stop there because I've got a lengthy intros as well. But we've got an amazing panel, so I'd rather give that floor space to the panel itself. So we're going to start with Liz. Liz, please introduce yourself and take us away.
So hi everybody, my name's Liz Prince. I run a specialist games recruitment business called Amiqus. I've been a recruiter since the early 90s, embarrassingly, but also probably more importantly for today, I've been a woman working in the games industry for about 16 years now. Kish, I don't know if you want us to sort of stop there for now and then...
No, I think carry on. Please carry on introducing as well, and why. I mean, you're all worthy of the nominee. I know all of you personally by now, anyway. But I would love to know more of what you do as in terms of getting this worthy nomination, please.
Oh, thank you. So I, with some colleagues, I launched an initiative called Putting the G into Gaming in 2018. And really the reason behind that was because we wanted to try and help studios with the how of diversity. I think we've felt for quite a long time that there's a lot of will around diversity in the games industry and that people really want to make a change, but they don't always necessarily know what to do. And I think I have to say my perception is that that's still a little bit the case at the moment, and that there's lots and lots of different messages around, especially this year. We've got a focus on people generally through COVID, but I think studios are still struggling with which thing to look at first when it comes to diversity. One of the things you asked us to think about, Kish, for this panel was the challenges that we've faced trying to talk to studios about diversity. And I've kind of put that into two areas. Firstly, I think to get the topic of diversity away from being a project or something that maybe HR do, and really trying to get it to board level leadership discussion. So that it's really taken seriously and it's really part of the DNA of a studio. And the other challenge that I think I just wanted to mention was really people wanting to focus on diversity more at just the entry point. So thinking about attracting a more diverse workforce, but not necessarily making changes within their culture. Or even within the selection of those individuals. So retaining people is obviously as important as attracting them. And I think sometimes the attraction is what people have been focusing on rather than necessarily the culture and retention.
And Liz will go more into detail with that as we go. So can I have So I'll cover that a bit more after that. But Robin, if I would love your intro as well.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Robin Gray. I have been working as a digital media owner for about the past 5 years. 18 months ago now, we started Gayming magazine. It's Gaming with a Y, which is the world's only LGBTQ video game magazine. It's predominantly pointed at consumers. But from day one, I was very passionate about making sure that we reflected diversity and celebrated diversity in the industry. And we were doing that through a number of things related to interviews and making sure that people saw themselves in the industry being reflected in our pages. I say pages, we're a digital magazine, but I still say pages. The key thing for me, I think, is that we live in a time, and the UK diversity report that came out in February. Can we remember February? No, February before all this happened.
February?
What's February? Before the world collapsed, UK delivered their diversity census, which revealed that 21% of the UK games industry workforce is a member of the LGBTQ community, which is insanely good considering the average sort of the UK population is around 4%. And I think that for me was a great kind of validation as to what we're doing in terms of if people are outside the industry wanting to get in the industry, sort of like coming up through university, schools, etc., but like, oh, but I can't work there because I'm a black and trans or whatever. But what I've tried to do and what we've tried to do at Gayming is by having these interviews that shine a light onto all people in the industry, all the way from the top, all the way down to the bottom. I'm hoping that people read those interviews and go, hey, this person, I can see myself, this person's like me, and they work in this industry that I'm hugely passionate about. And I think for me, that was kind of like one of the major things that really attracted me into doing what we're doing. And then at the end of August last year, I was one of the co-founders of Out Making Games, which is the new UK, I say new, it's been over a year, but again, time. It's the new-ish UK LGBTQ representation group in the games industry, shortened as OMG for short, because it's just cooler. And that to us has been sort of like we started off doing physical events. They've pivoted into online events. We've been doing some great stuff. We're going to bringing on mentorship and some other exciting things in the very near future as well for LGBT people. And then obviously the sort of the bigger news, really, just to sort of wrap everything up for me, is that in February it's the Gayming Awards, which is the world's first LGBT video game award show, which has been stupendously well received and supported by the industry around the world. We've had some amazing people come on board already with EA Games as our headliner, but we've got more announcements coming out in the next couple of weeks as well.
Oh, thank you, Robin. Harinda, I'll let you go next.
So I'm Harinda Swanger. I'm the Operations Director at Sumo Leamington. I also and sit on the advisory board for Women in Games, and recently been elected to the UK board. So I've been in the industry for 13 years, and I think a little bit like Liz, a lot's changed in that time. Not enough, but a lot has changed. But there's, I still don't see enough people like me, female and a person of colour that sit at a leadership level in the industry. There's not enough. I feel really lucky for at Sumo Leamington. There's, I always describe the studio director, my counterpart, as being a middle-aged white man, and me, a young female. In fact, there's only a couple of years between us. It doesn't matter because that's not how it looks, right? So, but that's it's a good place to start. And also the other side of that is when we talk about bringing people in from a junior perspective. From a male to female ratio, we're 50-50. It's not so great in the middle, but we still need to work on that. But we've recently also, I define this as probably the proudest moment in my career, is that we recently at Sumo Leamington won the Geo.biz Diversity Award. And I wept the whole time because it really does mean a lot to me. Because when we set out to create what we were doing, the one thing, obviously getting the right projects is really important, but getting the right team together is so much more, because get the right team, they're going to look after your projects, right? So having that diversity from day one, and the fact that there is a place for everybody. You know, we work really hard on that. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter, right? Who you are, there is a place for you. You are accepted as you are. No one's asking you to change. No one's asking you as a woman to be less emotional. No one's asking anything. You bring yourself, and that's what makes you part of our team.
Wow, thank you, and congratulations again for your award. So I've got I'm going to push on to this. As I said, we're slightly running out of time as well very soon. Shay, I'll let you go next, and then we'll open our discussion after Ian finishes.
Sweet. Hi, so I'm Shay Thompson. I'm a presenter working in the games industry. So that usually means I make like talky words with my mouth when people pay me to do that. But I started in the industry about 2 years ago and noticed that there's just not enough Black people here. So I started off an initiative called Level Up Link Up, which just started off as like events that I was running like out of my own pocket. In like Dalston, and then we got support from the BFI, and obviously with COVID we aren't doing physical events anymore, so that's pretty much on hiatus, but it's pretty much what I'm here for. Because yeah, you know, looking at the stats that Yuki put out earlier on this year, 10% of the industry identifies as BAME, and like the Black percentage is even like way less than that. And you know, those figures are really, really stark and fall like way below the national working average. And yeah, it just, there's no reason for that. You know, Black people consume and like play games and engage with games, so why shouldn't the workforce behind that, you know, reflect that? So that's something that I sort of set out to do in my own time, and that's what I've been working towards as well.
Thank you, Shay. And I'm going to finish up with you, Ian.
Hey, I'm Ian Hamilton, and I am an accessibility specialist. So that is accessibility for gamers with disabilities. And I've been doing that for about 13 years now. Initially, kind of alongside my existing job in design and UX, gradually moving more across it, and now that's what I do. So working partly in advocacy and awareness raising. I'm trying to educate people about why accessibility matters and how the design decisions that all of us make on a day-to-day basis can either include or exclude people from accessing games and all the potential that games have. The other side, consulting, helping people out who need some pointers on how to go about this kind of stuff. So I've done all kinds of stuff over the years. I led the work on gameaccessibilityguidelines.com. I also run GAConf, which is a conference solely on game accessibility. I've helped out with all kinds of projects, from the Xbox Adaptive Controller to the accessibility feature set in The Last of Us 2. Like I said, I've been doing it for a fair old while, and it's been quite a journey. From when I was starting out, it was just a very small number of people kind of rocking up at develop and cornering some poor developer in the corner of a bar late at night and bending their ear trying to make them K, you know. So the landscape is quite different now, and I think that's been the thing that's been most exciting to see, is just how many people now care passionately about this kind of stuff, which is helpful when you're working in it as well. If there's so many other people out there who are fighting the same battles as you, it's kind of some nice group therapy there as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian. I mean, one of the things which all of you have echoed this, so all of you have started this because you care about this. I don't, nobody ever does this for awards, so it'll be so inefficient way to do that. You could probably pay somebody for awards or something. So you do it, and it's just a reassurance when you get nominated that you're doing something right. But the fact that you all started this, and same with me when I became the founding chair of BAME Games. It's all of us are starting this as of our own. Shay, I can relate with you. We run BAME Games now. It's 5 years out of our own pocket. So it's a lot is actually down to I just don't know, have the skills to find sponsorship and everything else. Although sponsorship does come along also, but again, that's never been the priority. We do this because we love this. And okay, so I'm going to end with just going to read out Gemma's intro. Who couldn't make it, so I do apologize. I'm going to read this out. So Gemma works for Media Molecule, and she has apologized. She couldn't make it for this panel. Her diversity passion started with getting more girls into games, learning how girls as young as 10 stopped being interested in STEM subjects, STEM careers, And one of the main reasons being apparently lack of female role models, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate that to that. So between the age of 10 and 15 is the window which Gemma feels have girls getting sort of nurtured in the passion of STEM subjects before they turn their backs on those areas, potentially for good. She gives an example of her daughter wanting to go to a games workshop during her summer holidays, but didn't want to keep going because unfortunately there were no girls, any other girls in that summer camp, and she felt it was all very male focused, and the themes were very male biased, so she lost interest. So again, when running a course with Leila Shabir, who runs Girl Makes Games, she used to say, sorry, I apologize. She used to say, saying you can't be what you can't see, and that's what really stuck onto her. And from that moment, she made it her mission to help showcase the amazing roles in the video games industry and all the different possible paths, especially for young females, into the video games industry. And so, yeah, I think all of you have got all. It started off as what you want to believe should be a change, and you've taken that all the way to about nomination. I'm going to start on with the question, which is my second question, which I think, Liz, you covered a bit more, so I would love you to elaborate a bit more as well. And it's just if you share some of the actionable tips, advices of creating a more fuller and diverse and inclusion workforce. And after Liz, please just jump in. I don't want one of this where everybody goes one after another. So I'll take it on, Liz.
Oh, right. I guess, God, when people say what's like one thing that you can do, it horrifies me because I know there's like so many things that I want to talk about. So my flow chart with this starts with leadership. It always starts at the top, and it always starts with understanding the why. And I'm not talking about the kind of commercial stats that are thrown around about how diversity is great for the bottom line. I'm talking about like your personal why, what's really important to your business, and it's everything Harinder was just talking about there. It's why it's important to Sumo Leamington to start out being a diverse workforce, etc. But I think once businesses have got their personal why, that's where I think people sort of get unstuck, or studios can get a bit unstuck. So I always talk to studios about thinking about gather some data and gather some sentiment. So understand what you've got already in your team, and then also understand how they're feeling about being part of your team. So are they proud? Do they believe that they have a voice? Are they actually able to not just be a diversity stat, but can they actually influence what you do and how you do it as a business? Because that for me is the difference between diversity and inclusion. So yeah, once you've got data, once you've got sentiment, that should allow you to have some goals. Some things that are the most important, because again, I think that conflicting priorities and also the fact that diversity is such a huge topic that I think people just get worried that they're not going to get it right. And so I always want to say to people, just think about the one or two really important things that you can focus on and then start there. I'll stop now because that's otherwise I keep going down.
Yeah.
Harinda, before I let you go next, I just want to tell everybody who's viewing us right now, you please post your questions in. What we'll do after finish our sessions or so, we'll pick up a couple of, we will have about 2 or 3 questions we can present to this wonderful panel. So please start typing those in as you go. And Harinda, you're all ready to.
Yeah. So actually following on for what Liz was saying, I think you're absolutely right. It has to be you have to want it. You have to want it and believe it yourself. But alongside that it's not just a tick box. right? Because that everybody in your team is going to feel, and there is, I do think there's a lot of people that just do it because they think it's something that they should do rather than they need to do it and they want to do it. And actually that is felt within the team. You know, if you're the best ambassadors you can have for what you're doing is for it to be, for everyone in your team to feel it. They feel like this is a diverse place to be. This is everyone, like that whole, you know, there's a place for everybody here. It's not, you know, it doesn't nothing matters because I can be myself here because I belong here, and that's that whole place of feeling like you belong and you can be yourself.
Absolutely. So I think we lost Harinder, but as long as it's just hopefully she'll come back. But I just want to add on to that as well.
The amount of people I've spoken to in the last.
She's back.
The internet.
Oh, the internet.
Yeah, on the internet. But yeah, just say, you know, if people in your team feel it and they feel like they belong, you know, that is the most crucial thing that you can do. You just have to make people part of your solution, because you know, we all need to make this happen. Yeah, we'll make better teams, more diversity, make better games. You know, it's not one of the days that it's 90%, you know, men playing our games. It is 50-50. We need to be creating games that are made by a development studio that is 50-50.
I mean, it needs to make business case why you have diversity, and acknowledging what contribution your staff brings in, which is making that business case, is so important, including, you know, from the top, nominating individuals who are the minority as such, as far as census and everything else goes in the video games industry. It is so important to bring out that you know, they're making that difference and making a more creative environment. I'm going to jump on to Robin. Robin, you want to talk as well?
It concerns me a little bit with diversity when people start talking about sort of like business cases and stuff, because I think that's always a dangerous kind of like, people start running the numbers. But we have to remember that this year has been a perfect example of where there is a business case of diversity, because it's called The Last of Us 2, who smashed every single record going for an exclusive PlayStation release, etc. And it was fronted by a strong female queer character. And I think that in itself is worth 1,000 sort of like demonstrations to whoever sort of is sat there controlling the beans, to sort of say, if you do it properly and you do it really well, you can have amazingly diverse characters at the front of your games and you can make money off of them. So I think there's that point. I think this year's been a great example. That there are other ones obviously that we can go into along that as well. But also I just want to pick up on one other thing that Harinder said about teams. The one, I was going to say good thing about the pandemic, but the one good thing about the work from home environment that we're currently engaging in is that people can be at home and they can be themselves and live the way they authentically want to live. And I think that's been something that we need to find a way of carrying this forward. There will inevitably come a time when all this just blows over somehow, and after about the 25th lockdown. But the point is, I think that when you can get back into an office environment, people need to feel like they can just come and be themselves in the workplace. That anecdotally, I know of a lot of people, particularly in the trans community, who have enjoyed work more because they've been able to stay in their comfortable home environment, living the way that they want to live, presenting themselves. They want to present themselves. And I think the fear of commuting, the fear of having to go into an office place and to conform and to present themselves in a certain way, all of those distractions are huge. And I think it feeds into, again, going back to the Yuki report, there was a really big spike in mental health, people that reported mental health who were from the LGBT community, particularly also, again, from the trans element of that community as well. And I think that's always a massive sort of sign that living an authentic life in a sterile work environment's never quite the healthiest thing for one's mental health. So I think, again, leadership from the top, I accept that, but I think there is an argument to be made for continuing a work from home or a supportive working, or just letting people be themselves a lot more in the workplace. How can we, I guess the question is, how can we take the sort of positive energy that we're currently enjoying, I think on the whole, in our work from home lives, and carry that forward?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just to like, I know you wanted to probably direct the conversation in, in a much more directed manner, but just to follow on from that point, I think a lot of the time the approach is, okay, we're going to do this thing and then try and aim it towards like, whatever community that they want to aim it towards. But I'm like, just throw the whole thing away and start from the beginning, like completely change your approach. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying something. If it genuinely doesn't work, then fine. But like, I think these unprecedented times have shown us that we can actually try new things, and that's fine. I was gonna say the world isn't gonna go on fire. It is, but like I think it's because like
Don't
I think
say
a big I've just jinxed the saw. I'm very sorry. Like I think the way that I came into the industry was completely by chance, not to diminish my own successes, but like I came into the industry completely by chance. It was because somebody gave me a very unconventional ladder into the industry, and if that's what we have to start doing to get more like very varied and diverse talent, then that's what we should start doing, and we shouldn't be afraid to do that, because obviously the previous approaches weren't working. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, spot on that. That if you're not getting enough diverse applicants, you need to try harder. It's no matter of like we tried, we put down all the sort of keywords of looking at diverse applicants, etc. No,
it's
you're
not even
looking
trying
in the right
harder,
place.
Kish. Yeah, that's it. It's
In the
not
right
trying
place.
harder, because it's doing the same thing over and over again, but trying it a little bit harder just means taking that extra couple of quid into Indeed and seeing what comes up. But that's not what you need to do. You need to let ladders down into communities that have never had the ladders there in the first place.
Absolutely.
There needs to be outreach that goes genuinely from the studio into those communities, whether it's outreach workshops, whether it's sort of trials in the company, whether it's I don't know, I'm making all this up, but you've got to do something different. I think trying harder is one thing, but I think trying harder to be different, I think, is the end of that sentence.
That's exactly what I mean. Like try. In fact, so I think Liz, I've got to, because I think you're a very good example of where you help companies change their job description. If it's a bullet point job description or so, you will always get the minority go, oh, I can't. Just it comes from a very good place. Like I just don't know 3 of those things. Whereas if you're your classic male, including myself or so, I'll just say, right, I just know 7 of those must-have skills. The 3, I'll just wing it and I'll apply for that role. You will have so many who just don't. So I'd love you to elaborate a bit more on.
It's kind of I totally understand and agree with putting ladders into places where you haven't reached out before, but it's also the studios have to decide on to bring the barriers down on all their job specs. So bullet pointing, gender coding, all of the basics around a job spec. So many clients actually, or studios, know that, but they will still insist on 5 years, 3 ship titles, endless C++, whatever. And I'm like, okay. And then they'll come to me and say, I want a diverse shortlist. And I said, great, that is absolutely brilliant. We will do that for you. Tell me what you need. And they'll go through that list and I'll be like, there's two people in the industry who'll do that.
Yeah.
And also you're in Leamington Spa and you're looking for people of colour within your team, but they've got to live locally and come into the studio 5 days a week. I think if you look at the population of Leamington Spa, with no disrespect to it, I think it's 80% white. So it's that mismatch of I want this, but I'm not prepared to make those decisions that will allow me to access that. Because once you've made that decision, then Shay, Robin, 1,000,000% behind you, then we go and drop those ladders and we reach out and we make those differences, but you can't have that mismatch. So our work is at the studio side to say, drop the barriers. And definitely flexible working. When we're talking about what we've had, this global experiment that we've done with flexible working, that is one of the key barriers to, in particular, women's progression in any industry, is not having the access to flexible working. So that is my hope for the future, that is a continued thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to just end with Ian, if you want to finish this before I move on to the next and the final question or discussion item I've got for all of you. So, Ian, do you want to finish up with anything you want to add?
Yeah, so I did have something ready to talk about, but actually I'm going to change tack a little bit because some of what Liz was saying was ringing lots and lots of bells for accessibility, and that is people being unsure of where to start and scared of doing it wrong. That's absolutely a thing in accessibility, and I've seen it across all industries as well. Just people being intimidated by the scale of all the things that could possibly be done, and just being like, I'm not even going near that. I'm too worried about messing it up. You know, that's the worst thing you can do. The way to get around that is just to do anything. It doesn't matter at all. Just pick some low-hanging fruit. And think of it like optimization, right? Like every little thing you can do is just going to make your game more enjoyable for more people. So just pick some little thing, and you'll learn from that. You can take forward those learnings, what you learn about the features themselves, the process, the workflow, and the contacts you make through user research. Take that all through into your next game as well. And in your next game, this is what I wanted to talk about, was thinking about it early. You see this all the time. Studios who start thinking about accessibility do a couple of little things late in development. The same reaction every time. Oh my God, I wish I'd thought about this earlier. We could have done so much more. We could have done it so much easier, so much better. So that's the most important thing in accessibility, is just thinking about it early. And something that helps a lot with that is actually having people on the team for whom it's a real everyday issue. So having a decent representation of disability within the workforce. And part of that is doing a good job of hiring. But the other side of it is actually just making use of the disabled people you already have in your company. And you may be thinking, I don't think I do. Well, the data from, I think it's the IGDA Developer Satisfaction Survey, it was over 20%. So unless you're a micro indie, you do have disabled people in your studio. Lots of disabilities are invisible, you might not know. It can be just something as simple as, like get a guest speaker in or something like that, and see who turns up. Just try and find ways in which you can actually just make your company be a welcoming environment that people feel comfortable talking about stuff, that they don't feel like they're going to be rocking about and stuff,
Absolutely, yeah. We're pressed for time, so I'm going to move on to the next, which almost you've covered quite a bit of it, but just your vision of the future. I think some of the things which, unfortunately, when we say current, they're not happening. So they are almost your vision for the future, for a brighter future. Could you give us, Shay, do you want to take this off?
I mean, following on from Ian's point, I think it's a really important thing to build things in from the beginning. Don't think of diversity and inclusion as an afterthought. It should absolutely be, built in. It should be at the forefront of your mind all the time. So that's one. I've got three things, but I'll sum them up very quickly. The second is that all facets of marginalization and oppression, they all feed into each other. So yeah, it's never enough to just be right, okay, we're just going to talk about race in a silo. Race intersects with class, it intersects with gender, it intersects with sexuality, disability. So you need to be thinking of them as this sort of ecosystem, as opposed to these small issues that you can sort out on its own. And the third point is that oftentimes the answer to, or trying to find out the answer to figure out these problems, falls to marginalized people. And it's I sometimes have to remind people that I have a craft. It might not seem like it, but I have a craft. I talk for a living. I have critical thoughts occasionally about video games. I have a job outside of just worrying about the space and whether or not games is diverse enough. It's not my job to figure that out. It's the people in power. So look to them, try and bring them in, and rather than putting the burden on marginalized people's doors. It shouldn't be that way. It should absolutely be the other way around. And that is it. I will climb off my soapbox now.
It's difficult, isn't it, that we want to sit here saying that everything needs to be more diverse, and then we sort of say, right, well, leadership needs to go and get advice from people, or be them diverse themselves. I mean, that's the first sort of brave move, I think. If we can fast forward a couple of years, I'd love to go on to games companies' websites and not see 6 white men looking back at me on the board photos. But then it's difficult, isn't it, to sort of say well, come and talk to us, come and consult with us. But then, of course, you're constantly going, hey, can I ask a gay question? And it's difficult. But I think that there's been some great examples this year of where it's been done really naturally. The game Tell Me Why that was released, which had our first sort of trans protagonist, they created that character in consultation with external agencies and also, more importantly, internal staff. They actually have trans staff, and instead of just like, can you just go and be trans in a corner and carry on coding or something, they actually brought those people into the room to sit them down to say, right, this is what we're thinking of doing, this is the way it's going to go, and can you now start helping advise? And even the voice actor themselves were able to sort of sit there and actually sort of say, no, that's not quite an authentic way of saying that. But and the key thing is they listened. And I think that's the sort of action point. And I think if we fast forwarded to that point 2 years from now, that's pretty much all my points summed up, really. A diverse board level and people contributing because they want to contribute, not because they're kind of like, you're the token whatever characteristic in the office, you must come and quickly do this and then you can go away again. Actually be involved from the ground up. And I think that comes back to Shay's point about, and Ian's point as well, about planning in advance, actually having some foresight to all of this.
In fact, all of you covered that, and the obvious solution is not hiring. If you're not large enough to hire people or so, Robin, you covered it. Getting consultants in. I don't think I can mention the studio, but this wonderful. They make AAA games or so. They brought in a person to give consultancy on disability, and one of the obvious thing which came up was, don't make a character disabled and then at the end they become enabled, or because that's quite insulting to, like, somebody's in a wheelchair and the aim of the game is actually you get cured. So like you can think of a better storyline, and that's not real life as such. So yes, games are fantasy as such, but getting people in from those sort of backgrounds, it's very easy. There's so many consultants out there making use of them. Absolutely.
There was a really, really lovely example of that in the Avengers game that just came out. They had an accessibility consultant go in, someone called Cherry Thompson. I don't know if anyone knows Cherry, but Cherry was there to talk about accessibility, but they got into representation and actually got Cherry into the motion capture suite. Cherry's a wheelchair user. So generally when you see depictions of wheelchairs in games, that's somebody who isn't a wheelchair user themselves, who thinks that a wheelchair is a chair. Whereas Cherry's motion capture, Cherry was there just like doing the idly wheeling the chair back and forth. There was someone on Twitter saying they were literally in tears over that idle animation. That's the kind of difference it can make from that little bit accurate representation,
There's definitely a place. I love the consultants on games, but I think there's some really brave things to be done by our, let's call them, white middle-aged leaders within the games industry, to actually say, I need a mentor, and to reach into, whether it be in their own studio or outside of that, not to talk about, going upwards, but actually reverse mentoring and learning and asking difficult and frankly potentially uncomfortable questions for them, so that they can learn and accept that they don't have all of the answers, and they haven't got the experiences actually. That would be something that I would love to see moving forward, that people actually are open to that type of intervention.
Yeah, definitely.
Liz, spot on. Sorry, that reverse mentoring, because we just launched a mentoring program. It is so important for the mentee to feel that they are actually playing an important part in reverse mentoring the person who is a mentor, especially if they come from a very diverse background. Thanks for mentioning that, Liz. That's quite an important point there. Sorry, Harinder, go for it.
I was just going to say, when we talk about a brighter future, Liz may have experienced a similar thing to this, is that the amount of people that I've spoke to through a recruitment process where they've said, I just want to tell you that I'm bisexual, or I just want to tell you I've got a child. The brighter future is people don't feel like they need to say that in an interview process, because it doesn't matter. That's what we need to achieve in this industry, and it shouldn't be that unachievable. These are really easy things, with all the things that we talked about, like the flexibility, like with having a more welcoming and inclusive workplace, like we're feeling that people belong anywhere. These are all achievable by hiring the right people in the first place, right? Anybody in your team that makes anyone feel anything less than what they are, they don't have a space in this industry. We need to get rid of those people, and we need to be focusing on the people that really should belong here.
Absolutely. Just where we carry on, if there's anybody who has some questions or so, we've got about 5 minutes left or so. We can slip in your question in or so, but I've got this wonderful question which I always end when I'm moderating panels as well. So if there's anybody who's got questions, now is your time, and otherwise I'm going to jump on to my last questions to close the session. So I'm going to give maybe a minute or so if anybody has got any questions to put on there or so. But I think one of the things, and I think Gem mentioned this as well, so in terms of the future, although it's happening right now, is having internal diverse groups. If your staff, if they're BAME staff, if they're women staff who want to run a group or so, and more importantly, and I've come up with this as saying, make it inclusive. A women-only group suddenly becomes a echo chamber of bubbles of people coming up with ideas of things, and then it's like putting it out to the wider, oh no, it's not our thing, it's their thing or so. That's the last thing you would want at a studio as well. So I think that's something which Jem mentioned, that in the future, creating that environment where everybody's talking about diversity, but there is a group which is led by individuals who passionately believe in that. So I think yeah, Robin, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, just it's a really great point, and it's really interesting because over the summer, obviously, obviously not this summer, but the last summer with all the Pride groups and stuff going on in the larger studios, I think there'd been anecdotally a couple of examples of that exact thing where people, and this is not from a negative place. The people that I'm about to talk about, it's not a negative thing. They're not going, oh, I'm not going to that, it's a gay thing. It's more from the fact, like, I'm not going to that because I respect that it's an LGBTQ people's thing. It's like, we need to break that down. You've got to get it inclusive in a sense of, yes, it's a Pride event, but people need to come to it. There's a learning opportunity. You need to come to these things, and we need to make people come into it, whether it's a BAME thing, an LGBT thing, a whatever kind of thing. People need, the whole studio needs to feel like they can come to their fantastic Pride event and learn just genuinely how fabulous the LGBT community is, to be honest with you, but also to actually learn a thing or two and be open to these ideas. It's same with the BAME community, same with disabilities and anything else. I think that the silo in existence, and like I say, this is not a negative thing that people don't want to come. They're trying to be too respectful. They're trying to be too respectful of space. And I think that's the sort of little interesting kind of thing where actually you want curiosity. We want people coming along.
So I'll give you, so BAME Games, our monthly meetups turned into virtual meetups, which is fantastic. It goes all across Britain now, and various studios. In fact, Sumo was our host last month. But we failed to attract, we advertised, do you have to be a BAME to attend this meet? Absolutely not. We want more people to see this amazing panelists. Harinder was on the panel or so. But again, it comes from this place of like, but if I go to this meet, I'm taking up somebody's space. They're not. And that's the thing, that we want all the allies, all these wonderful people to be talking about diversity and hearing about diversity. So yeah, it's not easy, and that message, and including inside your studio. There's one of the studios I visited, they had that particular problem. It's like when we set up diverse events, not many non-diverse individuals attend, and that's the problem. Even the message is like, this is for everybody. It just doesn't seem to resonate because it comes from a good place, but a wrong interpretation that we might be taking up the space. It's their thing, which is a terrible word. It's not theirs. It's ours to celebrate. So,
Absolutely.
Okay. I've got one question which just come through, so I'm going to read that out live, so it's great. So I've got Alex Jones who said, what can I do to convince my company to hire more diverse candidates rather than the people they know? Okay.
Liz?
So, yes.
All over that.
Yeah.
The hiring of people that you know is the biggest sense of affinity bias ever, because they're typically people that maybe you've been to university with or that you've worked with before, etc. My answer to that, if I'm being slightly flippant, is that there's probably an awful lot of candidates out there who are better than the people that you know. And, you know, opening, if you go back to the why would you just want more and more replication of yourself, which frankly leads to homogenous decision making. And, you know, you are literally talking to this tiny proportion of society if you just keep replicating what you've already got. Convincing is a worrying word, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, Alex, I mean, it's a great, it's every company faces this as well. And I use it as the golf club, you know, gentleman's golf club. You need a referral or 2 referrals before you can join in. And it just means everybody who thinks like you are the ones who then become that club. And it just crushes your creativity or so, because then everybody looks and thinks the same.
Don't you? You want the best people, not just the people that you know. And so many businesses in games and probably in other industries start off by how many studios do you see pictures of it in games industry or somewhere that you see, oh, here's our founding members, and they all look exactly the same. Like, oh, that was well thought out.
But, you know, and I mean, it's quite an elaborate topic. It's quite, unfortunately, and it's society, how it's structured. You know, look at politicians, and everybody's gone to that same Eton and colleges, so they've known each other. And that's how society forms. Unfortunately,
that's worked well, hasn't it?
But it's everywhere. It is suddenly, you know, you going to university and the connections you make there because of that course you are in. You're the ones who will then form companies and things. It's a difficult one to break it that down into get a wider view. But it's down to all of us as well to do that. Make sure you go outside your bubble.
In terms of what somebody can actually do to convince their company, I think that's always, as you say, Liz, that's
Scary.
that needs a bit of nerve. But if a job comes available, get CVs off of fantastic, diverse people that you know. Reach out yourself. Do a bit of your own outreach. Get that job description out into groups like BAME Games or OMG or whatever. And I would genuinely print off 10 amazing CVs of amazing people that could do the job standing on their head, walk into the office and put it on the desk and almost dare them to not look at them.
Absolutely. I think, you know, as soon as you start getting applicants who are very, very similar, you should worry. It's the same with sitting down in a meeting room, coming up with a creative idea and everybody's agreeing. You should worry. There's something wrong here. Everybody's not diversely thinking. So
exactly.
Right, great. I'm going to end on that, and I'm going to ask everybody, all of you, you know this question. So I want to know your favorite game. That's the easier one, but if anybody feels challenging, I want you to tell me a game which you felt had the diversity, everything which you just said, wow, this is the right direction of video gaming industry. So I'm going to start with Robin because he already sort of answered, but let's see if he comes up with what's your favorite game or what.
Well, I'm not going to say The Last of Us 2 now.
Your second favorite game then?
No, to be honest with you, as listeners to the podcast and whatever else we're very familiar with, I'm about to say Borderlands. Purely because Borderlands is an amazing game, but B, it's incredibly diverse, and they do a diversity in an incredibly authentic way. And I mean authentic in a sense that a character mentions their boyfriend in passing, and if you blink and you've missed it, then it's gone. But that's how you write authentic characters, because it doesn't particularly matter. It's not a case of mentioning the boyfriend and the rainbow flag gets hoisted in the background. He says with a rainbow flag in the background, I've just said and sparkles on screen and everything else. It's one of the most authentic ways of producing and making diversity really obviously beautifully subtle in games.
Wow, fantastic. Ian, let's hear your.
Well, actually covers both. So my favourite game by a mile is To the Moon, and that's my favourite game for a whole bunch of reasons, including that I was going through some tough personal stuff at the time that it helped me get through. But it also happens to do a really good job of diversity. And I guess to Robin's point, the subtlety, that even though disability, well, how much can I say without giving too many spoilers away? Disability is a key plot point, but it still manages to handle it in quite a subtle way. So it's on both counts, in representation and in terms of my favourite game, it's to the moon.
Shay, you must be having. I mean, you professionally talk about video games as a player.
It's been brought up in this panel a couple of times as well. But when you talk about authenticity and just normalizing, things that we should be seeing on screen anyway, The Last of Us 2 does it masterfully, and hits so many points for being like really, really accessible, and is a stunning but brutal game. If you haven't checked it out, I would more than recommend it. Absolutely. Very good game.
Fantastic. Liz, I'll let you go.
I'm a ridiculously bad gamer in that I am all mobile, and there is, oh God, I don't even know if I can even tell you my favourite game. My team will be really embarrassed if I say this publicly, but I am a Supercell fangirl and I'm a Heyday player. And I have been for about 8 years, maybe, to the point where at the Mobile Game Awards, the lady from Supercell was there and I was showing her how good I was at it, anywho, so moving really, really swiftly on, but anyway, I'm on like, I think I'm 167 level, anyway, but I love the fact that some of the games and the protagonists that we're seeing now they're challenging, and not just challenging, but they're actually they're additive in the sense that some of our games populations, our players, are now seeing true role models, and it's bringing people to gaming that weren't just the traditional Boise games. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So move on quickly from my heyday.
That's fine. And you should be proud. And that's the thing, that video games. I've left Harinder last because I've done a session with her, and she started off by saying, "I'm not a gamer," and I'm looking forward to then her repeating what she told me. And if it's not too embarrassing, I would love for you to then tell us how much you spend on a video game at the end of the year. But before you do that, because I just love the person who started off saying she's not a video gamer at all. I'm going to say, Gem mentioned it's a Mario Kart. She loves it because she can play with her family, her kids. And I just, again, that gaming being inclusive is just such a fantastic thing when you can play with your family as well. So, right, we're going to end with you. I'm looking forward to this as well. So,
You've built it up so much now.
you have to start with "you're not a gamer" because you told me that.
Because I do, and I always do say I'm not a gamer. I never meant to be in this industry. My interview at Sega, where I originally worked, it was a practice interview because I wanted a job at BMW. That is the God's honest truth. I fell into this industry, but I never knew this was where I was supposed to be, and it's changed my life, and it's just amazing. But I'm not a gamer. I'm going to keep saying that for you, Kish. I've played a lot of. Do I call it a game? Yeah, it is a game. It's called. Oh my God, I've forgotten what it's called. Ideal Home. It's basically it's a design home. It's all about designing different rooms, and you buy different things, and you can buy like coffee tables, and it's just amazing. It's the best thing ever. It's all about interior design. But I'm not a gamer. But I have. My husband has no idea how much money I've spent in this game, but it has gone up a little bit because we've been in lockdown since I last.
And he does now.
He's at work. It's fine.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah. So I think I'm coming up to about £1,300 on this app. And the last time my husband thought I'd spent £250, he actually said to me, "Just buy the coffee table, buy the real coffee table, for God's sake." Don't stop buying it. But I just love it. I love it. And I'm okay with the fact that I spent that money because I've had a lot of satisfaction in that game.
But
every time I see a pop up for it, I have to stop. I stop myself from going. So I know, because obviously in our studio, we are about games and service, and I have worked in mobile games, so I know all about Wales. I know all about how you lock them in. I am that person. I am that person.
and I'm glad this is how we end the session as well, because that just shows the diversity of this amazing world of people who play video games. And I want to emphasize that this is, Harinder is the classic individuals I want in future people not say, we need no longer say I'm a moviegoer. Do you remember in the 80s or something, it was a cool thing to put on your CV or so? Video games should be that I play video games as I'm going to watch a TV today or so, not having to tag then I'm a movie goer or I'm a TV watcher, if there was ever that word or so, or a theater goer or something like that, which I think has come back. But we have reached that point in the video games where everybody is playing games. So it should be like what Harinder just described. She's playing the games, but why should we be labeled? Thank you very much, all of you. There's so much, actually. I've written some notes down as well. I've learned so much as well from you. Well worthy award nominees, and good luck for Wednesday, and be award nominee forever. Thank you, and bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.